Welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. You figured that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. I am not alone today. I never walk alone with the wonderful people over on YouTube, Facebook, and X, but I have an extra special treat in store for today, and it is none other than a guy that I do a lot of shows with. I probably do too many shows with. And that, of course, looks like I already broke my camera, so good on me. The guy that I'm bringing on, I saw in the comments, people were like, hey, we are spoiled for choice. We are spoiled if we get the person that we expect to get. But oh, no. For better or worse, you're getting the guy that you may not have wanted or expected, at least initially. And that, of course, is a co-host in crime, a co-host, I guess I'd have to say, in life at this point. And that is none other than one half of the newest addition to Joy Media, one half of the best Phillies podcast this side of the Mississippi. That is none other than this man, Anthony SanFilippo. Anthony, how are you?
I'm not sure what's longer, the setup when we're ready to start the press row show on Snow the Goalie, when you're like, all right, here we go. All right, here we go. We'll do it live. All right, here we go. And then we wait like 6 minutes until we actually start. Or this introduction that was the music and everything else and getting into the show. And like it's an adventure. It's like you have to call places with you. Yeah, and to get ready to go on. It's crazy.
That's correct. Well, I mean, that's part of the fun of the show, though, Ann.
Yeah.
I tried, I explained to you guys the way that this works with the countdowns and everything. It gets the people in. It's a whole thing. It's a whole process. But welcome to the show. Is this the first time or the second time you've been on the show?
I think I did one when you did that one show that you had the pilot for Russ Reacts.
Russ Reacts. That was a good show. Over on
Russ
the
Reacts
channel. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
but
well,
no, this
welcome.
is the first time on the Russ Joy Show.
80 episodes in, and I'm finally joined by my co-host in crime. That's exactly what I want to see. Good morning. So, listen, there are a whole bunch of things that we need to get into. And really, the point of today's episode is to preview the Phillies, who start their season down in D.C., and we're going to get there. But I would be remiss, I guess, since you're here, if I didn't at least talk to you really briefly about what happened post-game of the Flyers game last night. And
We're starting with hockey?
Listen, because it is something that the people have already asked about, and it's a thing that was lighting Twitter on fire last night. You know, Ant, we could either start there or we could end there.
No, we'll go ahead.
Dealer's choice.
Go ahead.
Come in, just throwing yourself around. All right. So I want to actually throw it out to the clip of Torts last night. We're going to go there, and then we're going to preview the season, the Phillies season, which hopefully will be better than the way that this Flyers season has ended. Although, in fairness, this video just keeps freezing. This is my thing to happen today. Although, in fairness, if there's one thing that we did want to see out of Torts and out of the Flyers, it was to lose. I mean, at least that was the point. That was the hope going into the season, is that they would kind of fall apart. And surprise, surprise, they have fallen apart in every way. Torts was upset post-game. The Flyers got blown out 7-2. For those who missed it, it was an abomination of a game. And I don't even know how much of it you caught live, but it was a...
I'll be honest. I was at a dress rehearsal last night and saw none of the game, but I did watch the post-game with Torts on my way home from the theater. Which is, by the way, why I didn't even get my pick in, because Russ is texting. They have no service in that place. You know when I got the text from you that said, Ant, need your score?
What was that?
11:06 last night.
Yeah, that's probably not ideal.
It's when the text came in. But anyway, no, I did not. I saw none of the game last night, but I did see the post game.
So it was an abomination, and Cam York made a mistake early, and then Cam York got benched for the rest of the game, and it was brutal. And then, people asked, of course, like the media. Sometimes they ask questions, sometimes they ask good ones, sometimes they ask bad ones. This is the way that it works down there. But they asked about Cam York post-game. Torts did not want to talk about Cam York. But he also was asked just about, coaching right now and about where things are with the season. And, man, one hell of a clip. And I have an idea of why he did it. And we'll break that down in a second, but I'm just going to throw it out to John Tortorella. Let's hear his post-game comments, because there's one thing that he said that lit Flyers Twitter on fire last night. Let's go out to that right now. Here's John Tortorella.
The team's known for its offense, but was it their defense that caused a lot of problems tonight? Because it seemed like they had things buttoned down pretty good and kept you guys from generating.
No, they outplayed us.
York only plays the 3 minutes to start here. Is this something that you and the coaching staff want to use as a learning experience?
I'm not going to discuss that with you.
Do you think?
So there's the thing about not telling the media why he benched Cam York. This is akin to what happened the last time where he benched Mishkov and then said, I'm not going to, before you write your bullshit, just understand I'm not going to give you information, okay? It keeps going because that's not the standout quote.
I think this is a game, John, where the team just needs to maybe simplify things against a team like the Leafs, get putts to the net, bodies to the net.
It's my job to prepare this team in this type of situation. Haven't done a good enough job past couple of games.
These last 2 games, are you sensing frustration setting in? Maybe it's a cumulative effect from last week playing well and not getting results?
Well, when you're in this type of situation and you're losing all the time and there's nothing at the end of the tunnel for you, there's certainly going to be some frustration. But this falls on me. I'm not really interested in learning how to coach this type of season where we're at right now. But I have to do a better job. So this falls on me, getting the team prepared to play the proper way until we get to.
So in theory, you walk away from that, and at first maybe you go, all right, is Tortorella falling on the sword for his team because his team got their asses handed to them and didn't look particularly competitive in that game? And there could be some of that. People aren't really talking as much, Ant, about the disaster in goal. They're not talking as much about Cam York getting benched. Some people are today, but not as many. That standout quote was more around Torts saying, I'm not interested in learning how to coach a team like this, given what's going on. Your immediate reaction?
Well, I think it was probably a little bit of a word jumble there. It's not. I don't necessarily think that he's not interested in learning how to coach the team. He's obviously been in these situations before, right? I mean, he's not like he's never coached out the string in a season before. But I do think that he's trying. What he was trying to do there is fall on the sword and take the blame himself for how the team's playing. I mean, they've lost 12 out of 14. Yet 2 of them were overtime losses. So they get a couple points out of that. But still, they've lost 12 out of 14 here and plummeted down the standings, which, like you said, Russ, in a season where it's all lost, it's not the worst thing in the world. But at the same time, it does beg the question, like, are we nearing the end with this guy? Because he's going to say it that way, but is it because, when Charlie asks him about frustration, are the players so frustrated that they're just not responding anymore? And that's the question that needs to be asked, really, because if they're not, if you've now put yourself in a situation where this is Gabe Kapler-esque in a lot of ways, right? Wow. But I'll just say it this way. The Phillies had a great start to the 2018 season. They looked like they were going to be, in contention all the way to the end. Then they hit September, and Kapler hit the panic button, and they completely and utterly collapsed and fell out of it. That was the Flyers last year. With the whole benching Couturier thing and everything else, the players didn't respond well, and the Flyers had that end-of-season collapse and missed the playoffs. Then the following year, it was more of the same of Gabe, right? And the mistakes that Kapler was making as a coach or manager were happening earlier in the year. And it got to a point where, that was the year when Zach Eflin was like, I'm not doing what they want me to do. I'm going to pitch the way I want to pitch. All right, that was the real damning moment for Kapler, I think. That Eflin was going to go back doing things the way he wanted to do, and other players were not necessarily happy. That was the JT Realmuto eye roll, if you remember that, right? So that whole thing started happening. And the Phillies, again, had an end-of-season collapse, but it was never really thought that they were going to be a playoff team because it just never felt the same as it did the year before. And then Kapler was basically on his way out at that point. Yeah. John Tortorella has another year left on his contract. And
he's been a lame duck before in Columbus, and it went very poorly. And he said after his dismissal that it was a terrible situation. So I guess the Flyers are kind of in shitter get off the pot mode now, right? Like, you can't have him go into the final year of the deal. Unless you tell people this is his last year coaching, then he's going to move up to an advisory role after next year, no matter how it goes. But then, like, that's weird too, right? Like, because then it almost says that no matter what happens on the ice next year, he's going to remain within the organization. Like, they're in a weird spot with him.
Well, I think it's a delicate spot to be in all honesty, because I'm not sure that the Flyers know what exactly that they want to do next season until they know what that roster looks like next season. But at the same time, I think that there's a couple of coaches that they like that may be out of a job after this season, and then you sit there and say, well, do we act now? Do we ask Torts to come up, move upstairs after this season, still be part of what we're doing, but hand the coaching reins over to somebody else? Like, I think that Mike Sullivan may not be back in Pittsburgh. I think Rick Tocchet may not be back in Vancouver. I know Jonesy has a good relationship with Tocchet. I know that Torts would be thrilled if Sullivan replaced him in his final year, right? Like, they're really tight, they're really close, so maybe there's a thing there, and it makes it like a little smoother of a softer landing for Torts to get out at the end here, because he has also said that he won't coach again after Philadelphia. So it's a matter of, how do you want a guy who's one of the all-time winningest coaches, right, to finish his coaching career? Like, do you want to give him the respect of letting him go out the way he wants to go out, quote unquote, or do you just basically say, you're out of here, pal?
Yeah,
right. I mean,
is he going to go out with a whimper here?
Right.
So
it's a tough call.
Season.
It's a tough call, and so then the Flyers have to decide: do we want to do that with one more season of him, and then that's it, he's done, or is now the time? And we talked about this last year, Russ. And because there was some conversation about, the way that the thing fell apart at the end of last year, of maybe he would go after last season. And like everybody that I talked to in the organization was like, he's going to get at least one more year. And well, now we're at that one more year point, and it might not be. This might be the end.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing too. So like when I first saw the quote first. I think Kevin Kurz put out the transcribed quote first. And I went, ooh, that's a brutal line. Like, I don't want to learn how to coach this. And then I saw the clip, and this is why it's important to have full context. I went, oh, it's not tongue-in-cheek, but it's like the implication there clearly is like, I don't want to learn how to coach a team that's going nowhere at the end because I never want to be in this situation, and this is not a place that I'm used to being. So, like, I know that a lot of people kind of lit themselves on fire, and they were like, oh, this is it. Torts is gone. Fuck Torts. He's out. And I'm like, I don't think that's what this is. I mean, listen, it seems like, and we talked to some of the same people and some different people. The feeling that I've gotten now for multiple years is that ownership really likes Torts and values Torts and thinks that Torts is a fundamental key cog. I mean, I think Hilferty said a year or two ago that Torts is like the spirit animal, the spirit guide or whatever of this culture and this team. Like, Torts ain't going anywhere. Like, even if he leaves the bench, he's staying with the organization. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but like the people who think that they're going to fire John Tortorella, no, won't happen. It would require something to significantly go wrong. After what happened with Couturier last year, that would have been grounds, from my mind, to potentially part ways and not see this become a longer-term relationship between the guy and the team. I don't know. I look at this and I just go, you know what? They mistimed it by a year. This is almost like Flyers 101. Mishkov coming over a year early is good to an extent. They are now, I think the last time I looked, are they now number 4 on Tankathon? I have to do the daily pull of it, and I don't know what's going on over here with the feed. But they have the 4th best odds of getting the number 1 overall pick. Right, and so we'll do what we do here on the Russ Joy Show every time we talk about the Flyers. We'll give it a quick spin. I mean, Buffalo has now won back-to-back games. Nashville won last night. And so the Flyers have the 4th best odds of getting the number 1 overall pick, and we'll spin it and see how it goes. Flyers 1-8-1, the worst team in hockey over their last 10 games. Let's see, where do the Flyers land? They dropped from 4 to 5, which, although bad, still gets you a very good player. This is the whole point, right? Like, you need to be in position to get one of those top 4, top 5 guys. Now, I don't know if you saw, but Misa fell to number 6 in Craig Button's.
He climbed. No, Misa went to 2. Hagen's fell to 6. Hagen's fell to 6.
Hagen's fell to 6, which is pretty wild. It feels like there is not a consensus in that top, let's say, top 7 or 8 players. Depending on who you look at, depending on whose board you look at, there is a lot of motion going. The reason that I say they mistimed it by a year is because the number 1 prospect going into next year's draft is the guy that is being compared to the Connor Bedards or maybe even the Connor McDavids of the world. Gavin McKenna has 23 points in his last 5 games. Now, he's playing in WHL, but, like, kid is an absolute menace to society. 33 points over his last 10. He very much looks every bit like a guy that's going to be a cornerstone of any franchise, which means, of course, Ant, he's going to end up in Pittsburgh. So we can at least say that while they mistimed it by a year, we've at least not gotten screwed out of the top position in the draft, because everyone knows Pittsburgh somehow is going to end up with that number 1 overall pick to replace Sidney Crosby. All right, so that's the Flyers. Flyers are a little bit of a mess, but they wake up this morning with the 4th best odds of going up to the number 1 overall pick. They are on a crash course with the lottery. The Sixers are potentially still, hopefully, on a crash course with the lottery. One team that doesn't have the benefit, I guess, of a lottery, and one that some people are willing to, I guess, take a lottery ticket on and hope that this will be a year that they get over the hump, is the Philadelphia Phillies. And the whole point of today's show was to preview the Philadelphia Phillies. Ant, first of all, before we get into it, can you let the people know where they can find your thoughts and your takes on the Fightin' Phils? Because I've been told that there's a new show.
Oh, you're talking about the new Joy Media production that we got going on, Fightin' Words.
Fightin' Words, yes.
Yes, Fightin' Words, which is...
I've heard of that show.
Yeah, youtube.com/@Fightin' Words, PH in the Fightin'. Little play on the Phillies words there. So, Bob and I crossed up. We said goodbye to the title, but basically took the same show off to this platform.
But not the feed. You don't own the feed, so the feed stayed where it was. It'll just lie dormant. Rest in peace.
Yeah, rest in peace to that feed.
It just lives there.
Yeah, it lives forever in the past. But, we enter year 7, I believe. 21, 22, 23, 24. Year 8. I'm sorry, year 8.
This can't be 8 years. Is it really?
8 years. It's our 8th season together of Phillies coverage between Bob and I. And, we brought it here to the Joy Media platform. We had our first episode that went live yesterday. And it's called Fightin' Words. So I would love for everybody to subscribe and listen to that show. And if you subscribe on YouTube, hit the like button. That helps as well. We did a whole season preview yesterday. We're going to have some more preview-ish stuff coming off of the reaction to the opener. I'll be down in Washington tomorrow for the opener against the Washington Nationals, and then Bob and I will have a show Friday to talk all about that game and some other season projections as well. So I look forward to having that on your fine network.
It's going to be great.
Yeah.
The reaction to the first episode was really good. The download numbers over on the podcast feed, strong. YouTube channel, building out. It's like starting from scratch, but we will get there. Greg Bondarenko says, Ant, you will be missed on Snow the Goalie.
Yes.
Apparently you're leaving Snow the Goalie.
I know.
Greg.
Yeah, well, I'm not leaving it, which just a little bit of a brief hiatus for the start of the Philly season, but I'll be back Saturday. We might have a special guest Saturday on the Press Row Show, by the way.
Will we? I might not be there, but okay. Who's going to be the guest?
Well, I don't want to say in case it doesn't happen.
Oh, okay.
But
is it something that people should be excited about?
It's a thing.
Okay, great. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's not a good tease. That was not a well done tease, Anthony. Not good. So wait, you mean to tell me that after the Flyers have been on a long road trip, you're going to miss our first Press Row Show back together?
I don't have a choice.
There are 5 Press Row shows left.
Yeah.
Wow. Sad.
I don't have a choice.
You hate to see it.
Yeah, I get
to see it.
I have a full-time job that's paying me to go to Washington to cover the Phillies. So I will be in Washington to cover the Phillies.
Joe Papel asks, when is the Press Road Show? Next season. We had 2 or 3 places reach out about wanting a Press Road Show, and we're just like, this team stinks. What are we doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. We might do something for the draft, though. I did not book a vacation during the NHL draft this year, which is an improvement over last year when I accidentally did that. So, anyway, Phillies. I keep trying to convince myself that there's something to look forward to about the Phillies, but I'm also a realist. For better or worse, I don't think the Phillies are going to I certainly don't think they're going to win the World Series. I don't think they're going to win the NL. I don't even think they're going to win the NL East. I think they're going to be in a dogfight for the wild card. We can get into some of the reasons for that, but can you first of all address whether or not I am overly pessimistic about this Phillies team? And do you see them doing anything? I mean, I know what you said on your show, but is there anything that I should keep in mind? Am I missing the point here? Should the Phillies be considered a contender to win the pennant this year?
Yes, they should be considered a contender to win the pennant. I don't think that they will, but that doesn't mean they aren't one. Look, the way I look at it, Russ, I think there are 7 teams really in baseball, and usually this is the case every year, who can win a championship, right? And it's no different in any sport. There's usually a cutoff where you go, okay, this is where it cuts off. Some of these other teams below it could get on a run. You might make a surprise playoff run with one of these teams below the spot. But really, when it comes down to it, you're not getting that upstart team in baseball that's going to surprise everyone and win the whole damn thing. So usually there's 7 teams. The Phillies are one of those 7 teams. Now, do I think that they're going to do it? I don't. But that doesn't necessarily mean they don't have a chance or an opportunity or a shot to do it. And that's why I have a problem with just sports society today, that we live in this trophy culture, right? Where everybody feels like you have to win or else. And I don't think that that's necessarily the case on a season-by-season basis. Now, when all is said and done, 6 years from now, we look back on this era of Phillies baseball. If the Bryce Harper era, Trea Turner era, this whole thing, Zach Wheeler, they've been a really good team and never won a championship, I think then you can look back at it and say, well, that was a big swing and miss, right? But to sit there and say from season to season, when the team is there in contention, that okay, well, I'm just out until October. Well, then you're not a baseball fan. You're really not. And let's be blunt about it. You have to sit there and go for the ride. It's the same thing I would say the same thing to anybody for football or hockey or basketball. If you're not invested until the postseason, and then you're only going to check in then, and you're going to gripe as soon as they lose a game or whatever, or lose a series, and they're out, well, then you didn't pay attention all year. And that's not fair to the team. And so I think in that regard, we do have to at least be acknowledging of the fact that this is probably a 90-plus win team, and it's not easy to win 90 games in baseball. So that means that they're good. They're probably going to be in the playoffs, which is a good thing, and they will have a shot to win a championship. If you said that to any team at the beginning of any year, I think that you're happy with that, and you hope you get there. Are there going to be frustrations and disappointments along the way? Of course there are. Of course there are. And it may end in frustration and disappointment. That is a possibility. And you could talk about those things in the moment. But as you start the season, to sit there and just say, yeah, I'm out on the Phillies, or I don't see much with the Phillies, I don't think that they're going to do anything, and just be blasé about it, I think is silly, because they're one of the teams that can win a championship in this league.
I'm out on the Phillies.
That's fine.
No, I'm not fully out. I'm going to take the family down to D.C. to go enjoy the opening series this weekend. But here's the problem. And I wonder if this is just a byproduct of the 2008 to 2011-12 stretch. When you look back on that stretch of time, right, and if you want to include 07 in there, I guess you can, making the postseason, but say it starts at 08, right, and it ends with everything kind of falling apart a few years later. When you look back on that period of time, I think pretty much any Phillies fan would say they should have had more than one. It was great to win the World Series. It was great to break a 28-year drought and win a World Series. It was a great moment, right? But at the same time, you look back at some of those teams, you go, all right, well, 2009, you had Cliff Lee. Like, it was a better rotation. Ghost White Pedro Martinez was sent out to try to get a win against the Yankees. And you have the weird home run ball that hits the camera by Alex Rodriguez where it's kind of leaning over the fence. All that. You look back at that season and you go, damn, that's a missed opportunity. Cole Hamels in that same postseason saying, can't wait for the season to be over. Not a great look. They continued to add. I mean, they obviously trade away Cliff Lee, but then eventually they bring him back, and you have Roy Halladay, and then you have the 4 aces plus Average Joe. And, like, you look at those teams and you go, that should have been a team that could have won more than one World Series. So if it's the semantics of, like, well, they could have won a World Series those years, sure. But in the moment, they entered seasons with us thinking they are a legitimate favorite. They are the best team in the National League. And then ultimately they came up short in the postseason. I'd argue probably the most painful was watching Roy Halladay throw a complete game, 1-run game, and lose to Carpenter, who threw the complete game shutout. But, like, you look back at that historically and you go, that hurts. Like, that sucks to think. That should have been maybe not a dynasty, but definitely like 2 World Series in 5 years, and it didn't happen. And I think that maybe that is part of what is affecting people, because there was this long stretch of time where the Phillies were largely irrelevant and just kind of mired in mediocrity. Bryce Harper coming here and them starting to add, and them getting Real Muto and adding Schwarber and eventually Castellanos and eventually Trea Turner. Like, you started to feel like, oh, I get it. This is going to be that repeat of that 2008 to 2011 window. This should be a World Series team. They make a World Series, they lose. And then things start to kind of fall apart. The bats go cold in October. And then last year, an absolute unmitigated disaster. They fail to knock the Mets out of playoff contention during the regular season. And then they get their asses handed to them in the postseason. I wonder how much of it is people are just kind of holding that residual pain of not seeing their team get to the pinnacle more than one time. Now they look at it and they go, well, this team is largely the same this year. It doesn't feel like they addressed some of their needs. What do you say to the people who feel like Dave Dombrowski didn't do a good enough job of maybe addressing the bullpen, about getting an impact bat? Where are you at?
Well, I thought it was a curious offseason because I thought there were a couple of under the radar good moves, but I also thought that there were a couple of questionable decisions as well. I'm not going to kill them just yet because I appreciate the fact that they want to keep the window open for more years because, Bryce Harper's here. He's only halfway through his contract, right? And he's your superstar player, and you want to try and win with him beyond 2025. So the one thing I felt was kind of interesting was, look, we only signed guys to 1-year deals, right? We have money coming off of the salary next year that they no longer have to pay. Granted, 1 or 2 of those guys could potentially be back, but we don't know yet. We'll have to see what it looks like as the season progresses going into next year. And they have 3 really exciting young prospects that are coming. Andrew Painter's going to be here this year. And then I believe next year will be the arrival of Justin Crawford and Aiden Miller. I don't think any of those guys are really tradable guys. I think that, you have to blow the Phillies away to give up one of those 3 guys. And they have some other nice young players that are, still a couple years away, but that, they're excited about. And, you don't pump up young prospects single A level too much just yet. But, if you quietly talk to people and say, yeah, this guy like Moises Chase, they think he's going to be a major league pitcher. And, Eduardo Taijuan is going to be the next catcher for this organization. And, there are players like that they have coming. So, in a sense, you go, okay, they're keeping this window open because they got guys who are going to be here beyond this year that are high-priced, top-end veterans, but they also didn't want to keep adding those types to block the path of young players coming down the road, which is what the mistake was, what that era of the Phillies 08, 09, that group. Because if you remember, after the last playoff year, 2012, they had a lot of injuries, still finished 500. Yeah. And so you kind of thought, okay, they were kind of like, all right, well, maybe if we're healthy next year, we could get back in it again. And, they failed to recognize the decline of the Howards and the Utleys and the Rollinses. And that team started its, long, arduous path.
Into madness. And
yeah, exactly. And so I think that is a lesson learned here. But as much as I liked watching Max Kepler in spring training, I still don't think he's a fit here because it's the team's too left-handed and they don't have a right-handed outfield option. I mean, Johan Rojas is really it, right? I mean,
were there any right-handed bats available in the offseason?
I mean, there were a few, but nothing. I mean, nothing that really excited you. But if you're going to take a 1-year flyer on somebody, I'd rather you take a 1-year flyer on a right-handed hitter than a left-handed hitter. In all honesty, I mean that's the way I look at it. And the bullpen, I'm not convinced that they addressed it the right way, and that's the thing. Jordan Romano, I think, will be fine. I think that was a fine signing coming off of an injury because he was really, really good for the couple years before that with the Blue Jays. And so I think that was a really smart signing that you got cheap. Joe Ross, they're taking a chance that he's going to do what he did at the end of the year for Milwaukee last year, but he's never been in that role before that. So that's a very small sample size. And then that was really all that they did to address it. And they're banking on
not a lot.
Yeah, well, they're banking on Orion Kerkering taking another step forward, and growing, which is fine. I mean, he's got that in him, right? Sure. They're banking on a much slimmer Jose Alvarado now getting past his physical, limitations to be back to being the guy he was a couple years ago.
Like Jose. Okay.
Spring training, he was fantastic. Again, it was just spring training. But if he can carry that over, okay, fine. They're banking on Matt Strahm being what he was last year, and I don't know as he gets older. I don't think he's a guy that goes in that direction. And then you got a bunch of middling guys that are in the rest of the bullpen. So I think the bullpen is a spot that I worry about a little bit. That said, they have the best starting rotation in baseball in my mind. I think they're
as long as they're healthy.
As long as they're healthy. I'm not counting Taijuan Walker, right? But
well, don't worry though. But the Phillies, we love Taijuan. He's a great guy.
But if
Taijuan has been. Listen, I know that you want to kind of pour some cold water on the hype that is building around Taijuan Walker. I get it. I totally understand that you're trying to tell people, hey, pump the brakes. I know that you think Taijuan Walker's in line for a Cy Young caliber season. The Phillies lost all 10 of his last 10 starts last year.
Yeah.
He doesn't give you any chance to win games. He got his ass handed to him in spring training. I think he finished with an ERA over 7, if I remember correct. I think the last time I talked about him on the show, he had like a 6.92 ERA, and I believe that has now gone up. Didn't I hear on Fighting Words yesterday that he has allowed just as many home runs as walks, and it's many of both. So, yeah, that's not good. Can you explain, really quick? Because I saw there's this weird thing going around on Twitter right now. You get your very Negadelphians, right, about the fact that this roster isn't very improved. You have people like me who are like, I don't think that they're going to compete for a World Series, but you never know. Fine, whatever. Let it play out. And then you get the people who are rainbows and smiles who are like, I just want everybody to have a good time. Let's just let the Phillies figure it out, okay? Here's the problem. Taijuan Walker stinks. Is there no one in this organization, is there no one in the farm system that could have just as easily gotten those 3 starts? And maybe you just tell Taijuan Walker, listen, you stink. We're going to put you in the bullpen. Maybe it says the long relief guy, whatever they think they can try to make Taijuan Walker not totally suck as bad as he has in his entire tenure as a Philly. And you say, we're not going to jerk him around, because that to me is the biggest mistake. Why are you putting Taijuan Walker in a position where he's going to get a few starts, early-ish in the season while Ranger Suarez, battles through whatever he's battling through? Why play that game? Why send him out? And at least one of the games is going to be at home. Why send him out in front of a crowd that absolutely despises him? Why not just allow him to be a bullpen guy and just not fuck with it? Why, Ant? Why?
I have no idea, Russ. I have no idea. This doesn't make any sense at all to me. The Phillies have options. They had, well, until they waived put Tyler Phillips on waivers. They had 14 starters on the 40-man roster. Like, all right, obviously you needed to dump Tyler Phillips in order to bring in Carlos Hernandez to add to the bullpen, which is fine. So, but you still have 13 starters on the 40-man roster. There's no reason Taijuan Walker has to be number 6. No reason. They have 6 other guys. Now, granted, there's probably a couple of those guys who are minor leaguers who aren't quite ready for major league experience yet. I get it. But, a guy like you picked up off waivers from the Marlins last year, Kyle Tyler. They brought him in the end of last year. They were kind of intrigued by him a little bit. Thought he had a really nice camp. Thought he was really solid in spring training. They started using him more as a reliever, but then at the end of camp, they try to stretch him out a little bit and get him out to three innings he pitched or whatever. I'd take a 3 inning start out of Kyle Tyler right now, where he gives up 3 runs over Taijuan Walker pitching at all, right?
Correct. Yep.
And it doesn't make sense to me. And Russ, it's not just one game that's going to be at home. Right, if we go off of what Dave Dombrowski said, that Ranger Suarez, we're looking at probably 3 weeks before he's back in the major leagues. Okay, fine, 3 weeks. You're looking at 4 starts for Taijuan Walker. 3 of those 4 will be at Citizens Bank Park. Now, granted, two of the 4 starts are against god-awful teams. Colorado Rockies are terrible. The Miami Marlins are terrible. You and I could probably get through 4 innings in a game against those teams, right?
Yeah, let's not be totally crazy.
But he is going to have to pitch a game against the Braves in Atlanta. You just chalk up the L from now. Chalk up the L. And then the Giants are not a bad team. I think the Giants are an underrated team in the National League this year. Granted, that game's in Philly, but I don't like Taijuan Walker in that matchup either. So, just from today, I'm looking ahead at this and going 1-3 in those 4 games with Taijuan Walker. I don't love that idea. I'd rather take a chance with a guy who hasn't pitched a lot in the majors, but it won't be under the spotlight and won't be under the pressure of the fans' anger and frustration every time he takes them out.
I would rather pull Adam Eaton out of retirement. I would rather go out and get absolute bona fide stud Paul Abbott. Remember Paul Abbott?
Yeah.
I'd rather get Paul Abbott off the 04 team. 1-6, I think, in 10 starts. He was horrific. Had a nice goatee, though. I'd rather bring Paul Abbott out of retirement than watch Taijuan Walker pitch. It is going to be there's Schadenfreude, and then there has to be a level above it, right? We all know that Taijuan Walker is going to stink. We all know that he's going to piss off the Citizens Bank Park faithful every time he takes the mound. The fans are going to be merciless and relentless in the booing of this guy. You said before, I can't think of one good reason why he's getting starts. I can think of 72 million of them, Ant.
That's not it, though.
To me, this is the hope that you're going to be able to send him out and maybe try to find some sort of value, create some sort of value that maybe at some point this season a team gets desperate and they say, just like those people who peruse the dating apps, they say, I can fix him. I think that's what Dave Dombrowski's doing. This to me is a vanity play. There is no reason whatsoever to have this guy take the mound.
No, I don't think it's that, because I know that they were really this close to eating that money last year. It was that close. We're out. We're gonna
some barbecue on there.
It was gonna be a sunk cost, right? I mean, they really were. The one thing I can say is this, and this is why I'm perplexed by it, but I'm not completely going bonkers about it. Is I don't think Taijuan Walker's on the team. Certainly by the All-Star break, probably before that, and it could well be just this first couple of starts. In all honesty, they've done this in the past where they have somebody make the team out of spring training that just has a job, and then they get 1 or 2 appearances, they blow up, and then say, "All right, see you later." They did it last year with Connor Brogdon. Now I know that's a relief pitcher, not a starter, but Brogdon had a blow up game. blew a lead, had a terrible inning that he came in, and they ended up losing a game because of him. And the next day he was put on waivers, and then he ended up getting traded to the Dodgers. I think that you're probably looking at something like that with Taijuan Walker. He either has to perform, and he's going to get a very, very short leash. And when I say that, it could well be 1 to 2 starts. And then they maybe go in a different direction. I think it's one of those kinds of situations. There was a couple other guys that were non-roster invites in camp, but if they would have added them, they would have had to lose somebody off the 40-man. I know you could sit there and say, well, they could have just waived Taijuan Walker in spring training and put that guy on the 40-man. Yeah, I get it, but I think I think that it's just they have a little bit more time on those players, because a guy like Nabil Krismat, for example, he doesn't have an opt out till June 1st of his minor league deal. So if you like him and you think he's a guy that could pitch for you this season at the major league level, no reason to get him up here just yet. You have the luxury of waiting a little bit into the season. So I look at it that way and say, either he performs and you're stunned, surprised, oh my God, where did this come from, Taijuan Walker? Or he's exactly what you thought he was and you move on from him after a couple of starts, and then everybody will forget by the end of the year that he was even part of the team.
He stinks. Okay, that's way more time than we should have even spent talking about Taijuan Walker, who stinks. Ranger Suarez's injury history is certainly a concern. You mentioned that if healthy, it's the best rotation in baseball. Can you give people an idea of what they should expect from Jesus Luzardo? Because I think we have a very good idea of what to expect from him. Zach Wheeler, bona fide stud, although time is probably running out on his dominance as an ace, but we love Zach Wheeler. Aaron Nola, head case. Cy Young stuff, not Cy Young brain. Or mental makeup, I should say. Probably a very smart guy. Christopher Sanchez pitched out of his mind last year. We want to believe that he's going to be as good or close to it again this year. Ranger Suarez, very good, cold-blooded killer in the postseason when healthy. But what about Jesus Luzardo? Because there have been some concerns around him in the past as well, I believe, injury-wise. So what should people expect with young Jesus Luzardo?
Well, he's got great stuff. I mean, and when he's healthy, he is a very, very good pitcher. I mean, a lot of people might forget he pitched Game 1 of the division series against the Phillies in 2023 against the Marlins. Not division series, the wild card. Yeah, and so, I mean, you don't throw a guy in Game 1 of a playoff series, especially a best-of-3 playoff series, unless he's pretty good. The issue with Luzardo has always been health. He did have the one season, 2023, where he threw 179 innings. That was the year he pitched in the playoffs for the Marlins. The year before that, 2022, he had a really good 100 innings, probably the best 100 innings of his career, and yet he had an injury and kind of limited him there. He is a guy who is a strikeout pitcher, throws hard, and if he's able to be healthy and give you, well, you always hope a starting pitcher can give you 32 starts, right? Let's just hope Luzardo can give you 25. If he can give you 25 starts, you're probably looking at 100, 140, 150 innings, somewhere in that range. He'll be a really, really good number 4 pitcher. Really good, because on most teams he's a 2-3. So he's mostly he's the Phillies 4. If he'll be a really good number 4. So I think that when you look at that rotation with a healthy Ranger, right, on most nights, and Bob said this on Fighting Words, you're going to look at the pitching matchup, which is what's going to set your betting odds, right, is based off the pitching matchup. You're going to look at the pitching matchup and go, oh, Phillies should win this game, because most nights they're going to have the pitching advantage over the opposition. And so, that's why you should never bail out on this Phillies team, because of the starting pitching. It's that good. And that's what, because of, they could have a complete down season, everybody not hit, right? Everybody be frustrating and like, oh my God, this lineup. We could
Well, hold on. I
complain
want to talk about the lineup in a second. I want to finish.
Yeah, but I'm saying, this is a pitching point. And as frustrated as people would be with the lineup, the Phillies are still going to win at least 82 games because of the pitching. The lineup really only, and let's be honest, the lineup really is only going to have to win this team 10 to 15 games. The starting pitching is that good, right? That they can carry this team to a lot of wins. And so, like, that's the thing you should be excited about Luzardo as well.
This is a good question, and then I want to get to the hitting because I think that ultimately is why there's so much apprehension around like buying into the team. Alex Schwartz over on YouTube asks, if Sanchez has another sub-3 ERA year, do you guys think he could step into that ace at some point? I'm not sold.
Maybe.
What did I keep saying to you last year? I kept going, Christopher Sanchez, really good player, right? Really good pitcher. I like the guy a lot. But, like, did he or did he not enter, was it last season as the number 4? Am I crazy? Like, I seem to remember at some point he entered a season as a number 4 starter, and then it felt like last year people really got behind the idea that, like, he should be or could be the number 2 on the staff. I think it's awesome. Like, his first 2 years, I'm not totally crazy. I'm just like, I just went and found the.
He was the number 5 last year, actually.
Yeah, in 2022, he started 3 games, had a 5.63 ERA. Last year was his first year as a full-time starter for this team. 18 starts, had a 3.44 ERA. Or sorry, that was 2023. Last year he dropped it to 3.32. It's a damn good line. Like, I actually still do value ERA. Like, he's a really good pitcher, but I think that, like, there's probably something to be said about, like, where he's been positioned in this rotation, right? Like, there's a difference between being able to be a number 5 or sometimes be a number 3 or, like, kind of get jostled around versus being the guy that is leaned on to be the one who's the anchor of the rotation and the guy who needs to win every time out, right?
Yeah, I mean,
there's a different feel to that.
Yeah, he's certainly not there yet. So if you, I'm glad you like ERA. I think that there is some value in it. I look more, at a pitcher's WHIP. I look at a pitcher's ERA plus because that compares him to the rest of the league. And when you see the last 2 seasons, and he was a surprise in 23 because they were searching for a number 5 starter in 23, and he kind of came in and stabilized things and gave them 99 great innings. And yeah, he wasn't as ultimately his numbers in those 99 innings were even better than they were last year, but he was still pretty darn good last year. He does get hit around a little bit on the road. He's really, really good at home. I mean, really good at home. And that's why they slotted him where they slotted him this year, so he could pitch the home opener and get more home starts as you spread the schedule out. I think he's got number 2 stuff for sure. Does he get to be an ace? He's not there yet, but he is also only 28, right? He's still got a little bit of time. Usually pitchers develop into aces, unless you're a superstar. Pitchers develop into aces, as they're approaching 30, 31, right? Really, that's when they kind of hit that target. But look at that ERA plus the last 2 years, Russ. 125 and 23 and 122 last year. If that's 100 is the baseline, right? 100 is the average pitcher in Major League Baseball. So at 122, he's 22% better than the average pitcher. That's pretty darn good, right? And that's why he was an all-star last year. So I think that he can be a 2, easily be a number 2 starter in baseball. Is he a number 1? Can he be a number 1? I think that there's still room for that. But I'm not ready to say, oh, yeah, absolutely, get ready, because in 3 years, Christopher Sanchez is going to be the anchor of this staff. I'm not quite ready to go that far with him.
And sometimes you don't have to have the guy develop into being that number 1 guy. Like, sometimes you just need guys who fall into their place, and they are consistently reliable. And, like, there is something to be said for having a guy who can be somewhere in that middle of the rotation that can give you quality starts every time out and can dominate, whether it's at home, like maybe if the home road splits are a little bit more favorable in front of the home fans, it's fine. I view this like very simply. when you're looking at the long term of this rotation, right? Wheeler, we know, is it 2 years left on the deal?
Well, 3. I mean, this year at 3, and this year and 2 more.
To be on this year.
Yeah.
Wheeler has a finite period of time. Nola, you still have for a while, although you and I don't see eye to eye on Aaron Nola. Andrew Painter is one that people get excited about, is one that has been deemed essentially untouchable in any trade talk. Will we see him this year?
Yes.
Comments earlier in the chat. Like, will we see him this year? Will he be like a mainstay in the rotation, like after the All-Star break? Oh. Well, hold on a second. If this is already the best rotation in baseball, why do they have to have why do they have to bring Andrew Painter?
Because Andrew Painter is Paul Skeens.
I'm sorry, what?
Because Andrew Painter is Paul Skeens. Why wouldn't you want to add a pitcher like that to your rotation?
Wow.
That's
a pretty bold take.
Well, because that's how talented he is. Russ, here's the thing, and I want to point this out because this is something doesn't really get written about, doesn't really get talked about, but it's the reality. Okay, here's a guy who at 19 years old was already being talked about as major league ready. The Phillies were ready to put him into the rotation 2 years ago when he hurt his elbow and needed Tommy John. Okay, and it's been a slow recovery back. All right. But the guy pitched in winter ball or in Arizona Fall League. He pitched already, so it's not like we haven't seen him face live batters before. But for the first time in spring, I guess it was a couple weeks ago when I was down there in spring training, he was going to throw live BP for the first time for the Phillies this year. He's already faced batters, but this was the first time he's going to do it this year, and he's down there, and we all got to go watch Painter on the backfield. Well, it wasn't just the media going to watch Painter on the backfield. Here comes Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper with their coffees and their flip-flops coming to sit out at third base behind a screen to watch Andrew Painter, right? And like all the veteran players are coming out. We got to go see Andrew Painter. Every coach and the manager were there. The Dombrowski was there. Everybody was there to watch this guy throw 20 pitches to Bryson Stott, Alec Bowman, Brandon Marsh on a backfield. There was not a person who missed Andrew Painter. So when you have that, and there's a reason you have that. There's a reason there's that interest. And that interest is because the player is going to be special and at that next level. And you had that same interest with Paul Skeens when he was with the Pirates last year. And everybody was like, when is he going to come up? When is he going to be here? And he arrived in, I think it was late May when the Pirates finally called him up, right? And he dominated at this level too. Andrew Painter is that level. If you want to look at a guy who you say, who's your next ace after Zach Wheeler, it's Andrew Painter. That's who it's going to be. And so it might take him a couple years to get there. He might hit it right away. We'll see. But I think that's the kind of pitcher the Phillies have in Andrew Painter. It's why they won't include him in any kind of trade, because you don't trade away that kind of talent.
I guess that's a positive takeaway. All right, I like a little bit of Andrew Painter talk here. So future stud.
Yeah, and so the interesting thing about that, though, Russ, is let's just imagine that everybody is healthy, right? Let's say the 5 guys, Suarez comes back, all right, at the end of April, and he's healthy, and Wheeler and Nola and Sanchez and Luzardo, they're all healthy. You're bringing up Andrew Painter. The Phillies have said July-ish. I'm going to tell you, my prediction has been for about a year now, or almost a year now, that it's going to be the week of Father's Day. As soon as I saw that schedule last year come out, and they're in Miami that week of Father's Day. He's a Florida kid. Where is he going to make his major league debut? In front of friends and family. Let's do it in Florida against the Marlins. That's when I think it's going to be. But let's say that's when he's coming up, and the Phillies have 5 healthy starters. Who's coming out of the rotation for Andrew Painter? That's, to me, a far more interesting question. Now, granted, it may be hypothetical because somebody could be hurt, and we never get to answer that question. But the reality is that if they are healthy, who comes out of that rotation and where do they go? To me, it's Suarez, because he's at least shown he can pitch out of the bullpen before, and maybe you're putting him into a role like that. but I'm sure there's going to be pushback from his agent because he's a free agent at the end of the year, and he's going to be looking to get paid. And now all of a sudden you're kind of not giving him an opportunity to start and show that he could be a 150 inning guy, et cetera, and get that money that he wants next year. That there's going to be some interesting decisions, I think, with the rotation, as good as it is, when Andrew Painter is ready.
Okay. It's a lot of positivity. The guy's had injury problems, right? Like there've been injury concerns. All right, we'll hope he.
Well, he had one injury, but look at how many pitchers have come back from this. I mean, Tommy John is a regular thing anymore. So many pitchers
that it actually
have it.
makes you better, makes you stronger. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah, it happens. Like it's not like it used to be back in 15, 20 years ago when you had Tommy John surgery and it ended your career. Like no more. Guys get it all the time now. Yeah.
I want to flip this now back to the last major concern, and people who have questions, comments, and concerns. I've seen a ton of them going throughout the show. You could drop them here in the bottom just to make it a little bit easier if you have questions here for AMP before we head out. But the real reason I think so many people are out on this team, or at least aren't willing to let themselves be open to be hurt again, is because the lineup is largely unchanged. Max Kepler was the biggest signing, if you want to put biggest in quotes. It's a team that has been horrific at situational hitting. It's a lineup that has gone cold multiple postseasons in a row, has certainly cost them a World Series, has certainly cost them the ability to go farther into the playoffs. You mentioned at one point on the show that Bryce Harper's halfway through a contract. He's 32. Schwarber's 32. JT Realmuto's 34. I'm not trying to say that these guys are done and that their primes are over, but, I mean, you're getting pretty damn close to those peak years being at or now past. How do you try to sell people on the idea that this is going to be different because it is largely unchanged as a lineup?
So I think we kind of get caught up a little bit in them going cold for 2 games against Arizona in 23 and for 3 games against the Mets in 24.
It's kind of important, though.
Well, no,
timing kind of matters.
Timing is everything, right?
Cold for 3 games in the playoffs, you're out of the fucking playoffs. So yeah,
yes,
people are going to be upset about
right.
That
yeah, I get it, right? I get it. But if you look at everything in totality, it's still a really good offense, like overall. And yeah, I get it. They didn't make, and I've said already, I don't think Kepler. And look, Kepler might hit 30 home runs this year. He's done it in the past. Like, he could hit 30 home runs for the Phillies this year, and they'll say, see, that was a pretty good signing. But the reality is that I think that they needed something different. Where I think that the Phillies are banging their head against the wall is with Trea Turner. I think that they're trying to turn him into something he's not. They want him to be an on-base guy. And he's just not an on-base guy. He's a good hitter who's going to hit 290 for you. He's going to hit you 25 home runs. He can run the bases really well, right? That doesn't necessarily mean let's put him at the top of an order and turn him into a 360, 365 on-base guy. He's not going to do that. He's not going to take walks. He's going to swing out of his shoes. He's going to swing at bad pitches. So they're trying to make him more of a table setter, and he's not that player. And I think that's a thing where when you look for frustrations with the Phillies, it should be targeted there more than anywhere else, because I think Bryson Stott's going to have a bounce-back year. I really do. That's the guy that I'm going to die on a hill with this year. I think it's going to be much better than he was.
A-OK?
I think he will be A-OK. I think he'll be much better than he was last season. I firmly believe, after talking to some people in the organization quietly, that nerve issue in his elbow was a significant barrier for him last year. But that he's now 100% healthy with that, and it's going to be a lot like the 23 version of Bryson Stott, who was close to being an all-star than we saw in 24. So I think that there's going to be improvement there. Harper needs to be more of an MVP guy. He's great. He's a great player, 900 OPS guy, but he needs to get back to being more of an MVP caliber type player. There was a poll done, I think, by The Athletic where they said, who's gonna be in the MVP race this year, whatever, and I think they came up with like 6 or 7 names in the National League, and Bryce Harper did not get one vote. Did not get one vote, right? So that needs to fuel him a little bit. That you're still a great player, but you're not considered one of the superstars in the National League anymore for some reason. So that should fuel him. So I think you need more out of those two guys. They're your 2 biggest players, right? They're who you're paying the most money to. You need more out of them, and then you got to hope with the outfield, because my hot take, I don't know if you heard it at the end of Fighting Words.
For the entire episode.
Yeah, at the end of Fighting Words, my hot take is the Phillies' entire outfield in 2026 will be different than the outfield is in 2025. All 3 positions will be different. So that's where your frustration should be. It's like, what can this outfield do for you, and how much of a superstar can Harper be, and can Turner live up to his contract? Those are your frustrations. Not, the whole lineup goes cold. It's not that. It's really not that, because this lineup does put up numbers. They do drive in runs, right? They do compare them to every team in baseball. They're top 5, top 7 in every major offensive statistical category, right? I mean, it really is. So we get aggravated with it because everybody watches the Phillies and doesn't watch the other 29 teams in the sport. If you sit around and if you're a nut job like me and you go to a Phillies game and then come home and watch another West Coast game as soon as you get home and want to watch 2 other teams play, like, you start to recognize, for all the complaining you do about the Phillies, they're still far and away better than a lot of other teams in the sport offensively, right? As frustrating as they are. So it really comes down to that. Like, you got to look at where Harper's good, but he hasn't been superstar. Turner's good, but he hasn't been his contract. The outfield needs to be better. That's the 3 things I look at in this lineup that say, if you can get those 3 things going, and then when I say the outfield needs to be better, they don't need to be all-stars. Yeah. They just need to be consistent. Those 3 outfielders, Castellanos, Marsh, and Kepler, which is what it's going to be primarily this year, those 3 guys need to be consistent. If you get inconsistency from those 3 guys, that's not going to help.
Do you think that there was the rumor in the offseason that Harper might have been open to going back into the outfield if they could find a big bat at first base? Do you think that that's something they'll look at?
Yeah.
Maybe even trade deadline? Like, could we see something happen there? Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah. It could. Yeah, it could. And so the one thing I say about that is, Bryce Harper, when he says something publicly, it's well calculated. He's not just speaking off the cuff and letting something slip. He's saying something for down the line. He's preparing you for something, right? That's what Bryce does. So when Bryce says that in spring training, he's not talking about right now. He wasn't even talking, even though he said, I know Pete was still out there. He's talking about Pete Alonso. If the Phillies wanted to go get Pete, I would go back to the outfield if you wanted to bring him in. I don't even think he really meant that. I think that it was a situation where he's putting out into the public, hey, I'm a team player. I'm willing to go to the outfield if you want to go get a first baseman who can hit. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Now, who's the big first baseman that's available next offseason as of right now? It's Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Whether he signs that contract with Toronto or not between then, we'll see. But that's a name, right, that would fit into the middle of this lineup.
Oh, I could get very excited about Vlad.
Right? And so would you, if you're Harper, you put Harper in left field and put Vlad Guerrero first base, it's a whole different animal, right? So I think Harper's setting you up for something like that. That's his way in the public of sending the message to the Phillies, like, go get this guy.
And remind me, what side of the plate does Mr. Vlad swing from?
He's right-handed. He's right-handed.
He's right-handed on it. In a lineup that has a lot of left-handed hitters. You're looking for for a righty bat. All right. You can do something about Vlad. I love it.
Yeah.
I can get behind that. I'm just looking here really quick to see if there's anybody over in the comments dropping anything in here for you. Joe Papel says, will Mike Trout make the playoffs?
The American League West is so wide open this year. I think Texas will ultimately win that division because I think they have the best pitching. And if you know me, you know I lean towards teams with great pitching, right? I think that, lineups are lineups. Hitters go hot and cold. I think that the teams that have the best pitching ultimately end up winning. The only outlier in the recent years is the Mariners because their lineup is so god awful that they're wasting great pitching in Seattle. But I think Texas is probably the best team there. But I think that's a wide open division. I think any one of the teams in the American League West could come through. The Angels made some interesting offseason decisions. Brought in some veteran players to try and get back to being a contender in that division, and since the division's wide open, they could be in the mix. I don't think they will get in ultimately. I don't think they are a playoff team, but they will be better. They'll be better than they were a year ago. There's no question. The A's are the team that I'm kind of like keeping an eye on. I kind of look at that. I like some of the young players they have there. They're going to be playing in a minor league ballpark. That's
what I was about to say. That's an interesting.
Yeah, that's noted for being a great hitters park, and they got a nice young lineup. I like the A's a little bit. I don't know if they're quite there yet, but I think they're getting close, and they're going to scare some teams. The A's had the fourth best record in Major League Baseball after July 1st last year. Interesting, right?
That is interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, that was a longer answer for the simple question, or the simple answer is no. Mike Trout won't make the playoffs. You know why? He doesn't want to make the playoffs. Why? Because he wants to go sit in the end zone of Lincoln Financial Field and get a ball like he's a Make-A-Wish kid. That's why the Angels won't make the playoffs. Also, he can't stay healthy. Also, he hasn't been an impact player in years. Also, this is why I said to Anthony for a good long while, I don't want Mike Trout anywhere near this Phillies team. All the best to him. All the best to the guy. We wish him well in his future endeavors, whatever that ends up being. All right, last couple of things here, Ant. There was a question here about who's first to come up, Miller or Crawford?
I think Crawford's a little bit closer. I think Miller's going to start the year at AA, and Crawford's definitely starting at AAA. I think Crawford's a little bit closer. If I had to bet, if you have an injury and you need a guy to come up for the outfield, I think Crawford could potentially get a taste of Major League Baseball this year. I still don't think either one is here till 26, but I think if either of them had a shot to get here in 25, even just for a taste, I think it would be Crawford. Okay. I think he's closer. But Miller, boy oh boy, I got to watch that prospect game when I was down there, and it was all the Phillies prospects going against the Pirates prospects. I was impressed. I mean, again, it was one game, but I was impressed by just watching a few of these guys play, talking to a few of these guys, and where they're at in their careers. I think the Phillies have a minor league system that's a little bit better than maybe the national folks will say. I think that there's some real talent coming for the Phillies. I think they have 3 high-end, top-level prospects going to play AA or AAA, and I think that they have some really interesting guys that are a little bit lower in the minor league system. That'll be 3 to 4 years out before we're talking about them, but really good. And that's, I like that about baseball. That's the one thing I like about baseball. It's you get to watch and develop these young players. You don't really come right in. You don't come right into the sport like you do in football and basketball. And I mean, I know hockey's similar to baseball in a sense, but I think you develop even longer in baseball than you do in hockey. And there's part of me likes that because you like to watch the journey and look at the path that these kids are on. And I think the Phillies have some players for down the road. I'll give you one more name. Let me throw one more name at you that nobody's talking about yet.
Yeah.
Aaron Escobar.
Okay.
Third baseman, has a build like Jose Ramirez for the Cleveland Guardians. Has that build. Short, stocky with a great bat. Got to watch him play. Hit a really nice double in that prospect game. I think the Phillies are really high on him and not really talking about him yet. I think he's a guy that you might start to hear that name come up a little bit more over the course of the year into next year as a guy that they really, really like.
Jim Cochran asks over here, how will the Phillies do without their heart and soul Stubby?
He'll be up.
It's all about the vibes.
He'll be up at some point. But keep in mind, there's something very important to him going to AAA.
What's that?
He's going to work with Andrew Painter before he comes up to the big leagues.
Interesting. Okay.
Right. Yeah. There's real value to him going to AAA this year for the first half of the year. Now, granted, if either Real Muto or Marchand gets hurt and both have injury histories, he'll be right back. He'll be right back. Yeah. But for the time being, his primary goal is going to be working with Andrew Painter and getting him ready. They have a major league catcher working with their top pitching prospect for the first part of the season. That's a big deal. That's a big deal for the Phillies.
All right, last thing. I need you to answer this because Captain Spam in the comments has been asking pretty nonstop here. He's asking.
Ford
asks why. Tell me why the Phillies will do better with situational hitting. Still haven't heard. I don't think they will. In fairness, I don't think that there.
But
there's a way to even try to guarantee it.
Here's an answer
until you get there.
Here's the answer to the question. Nobody's good at situational hitting anymore.
Is that true?
It's baseball. Nobody does it. There's no hit and runs. There's no teams don't sacrifice bunt that much anymore. There's situational hitting. First of all, the Phillies do have some guys who were great with runners in scoring position. Alec Boehm is sensational. One of the best in baseball with runners in scoring position.
Will Boehm be here through the entire season? Will he be here next year? Because a lot of trade rumors are going around with him in the offseason.
Yeah, I think so.
Surprised that he's back.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think so. And I wanted to say one thing to Ford, Mr. Spam, because I think he put 6 times earlier that
he puts a lot. I put him in a temporary timeout.
Yeah,
it might have to be a much longer timeout next time.
Yeah, but I know that he asked, I think repeatedly. I had put a thing out on Twitter that I was looking for questions for my mailbag over at On Pattison, and he asked a question and I never answered it. He doesn't quite understand the concept of what a mailbag is. The mailbag is you put out a question, we take that question, we put it into a story, and then you go and read the story where I answer your question in the story, right? It's not like I'm going to sit there and answer questions on Twitter. If I was going to do that, I would probably just do, open it up and we have a conversation like we're doing right now, right? And talk to each other. But the mailbag portion is you put it there, and then if it's selected, which I didn't select it, Tim Kelly selects it. And then we put it into the story, and then we answer the questions there. That's how mailbags work.
Okay. Interesting. That's how the On Pattison mailbags work.
Yeah.
I don't do mailbags. I don't write anymore. It's not a bad thing. Well, I do write. Yeah. I just don't write about the teams much anymore.
Yeah.
Anthony, it's been lovely having you here.
Yeah, hour and 15
on the show. I know.
Hour and 15 minutes.
If you take the Tortorella part out of the beginning of the show, it was a solid hour show, which is usually what we do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8:30 a.m. here on the Russ Joy Show. But we went a little bit long because we had to address the torts of it all to start the show, and then we got some good Phillies talk.
Yeah,
but the Phillies talk doesn't end here. I mean, it is a Wednesday. There was a new episode of Fightin' Words that dropped on Tuesday, and there will be another Fightin' Words that drops on Friday. People should get excited.
I will say Friday is a guarantee almost every week. Friday is because we look at the weekend series that's coming up. We look at the week that just passed. That was always our greatest day, most regular day. The Monday show, we like to try and do it Monday, Friday, but occasionally the Monday becomes a Tuesday based on the Phillies calendar, how the calendar falls. So but it's mostly Monday, sometimes Tuesday. And then every Friday will be when you can find Fightin' Words on the Joy Media Network.
How about that? Yeah. So, friends, I want to thank everybody who joined us today. I want to thank even those who spam the comments. I want to thank everybody who joined us today for the Russ Joy Show. It's been a lot of fun. Hopefully, you learned a little bit. You got a little bit out of the Phillies talk. Maybe you got a little bit even out of the Flyers talk at the beginning of the show. Do us a favor if you haven't done so already. Like the video, share the video, subscribe, and go over. Subscribe to the new baseball show here on the Joy Media Network. You can go over to youtube.com twitter.com/@FightinWords. That's fightin' with a PH. Fightin' Words. It's also available on Amazon Music, Pandora, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can join Ant and Big Butt Bob Wankel. I believe they might be going live on Friday.
Yep.
But they will be doing their shows. Sometimes they'll be live, sometimes they won't. Their cameras won't crap. Mine has done about 15 different times on the show today. I still have no idea why it's happened. And this never happens as frequently as it has happened today. And I feel like it might be your fault, but I'm not entirely sure, so I'm not going to blame you, but I think I'm going to blame you. Just
Blame me.
A little bit. Yeah.
Totally. I did want to answer one last question, Russ.
What?
I feel bad because Jim Cochran did ask, and I do talk about it on Fighting Words so you can get a more in-depth response, but my total win prediction for the Phillies this year was 91. I had the Phillies with 91 wins this year, only because the National League East is going to be much better. Yeah. Not the Marlins, but the Mets are a better team. Obviously, the Braves have rebounded with from their injuries, and I think the Washington Nationals are a sneaky, decent team. They're young, they're talented, they're going to be good. So I think everybody's going to have a lower win total than maybe you think, but I think the Phillies will be 91.
I'll announce. I guess do I have to put mine out since they start the season tomorrow? I guess I have to.
Yeah,
I have them at 89 wins, and I don't think it's a bad season. I think they're going to be in a battle for a wild card spot. If they make an impact bat acquisition at some point, it'd be swell. I just think they're going to have to fortify this lineup more so than the rotation. And if you're right about Painter coming up second half of the season, then there's no need to go out and get a pitcher. The bullpen is still shaky, still makes me worry, and there are potential injury concerns in that rotation. I will agree with you. If that rotation is healthy, could very well be the best in baseball. We've already seen, one crack with Ranger. You have to hope that the rest of the rotation stays relatively healthy this year. But we will cross our fingers and our tootsie toes. And I want to thank everybody once again for joining us here on the Russ Joy Show. Until Wednesday. No, wait, it is Wednesday. Until Friday, this has been the Russ Joy Show, but you knew that already because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. Snow the Goalie could be coming. There's a Press Row show on Thursday night and another one on Saturday. And there might be an episode of It's Just Wrestling hitting your feed soon, and you now have Fightin' Words on Friday as well. So get your podcast feeds ready, get your YouTube subscriptions ready. And by the way, if you haven't done so already, not only like the video, share the video, subscribe, ring the little bell. You need to set the notifications on. And if you check these shows out on your phone, you will have to allow the YouTube app to send you notifications. Otherwise, you might not get notified when the shows go live. So there's your little update for the day. So until Friday, this has been the Russ Joy Show. I've been Russ Joy. You knew that already because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. Talk to each and every one of you this Friday here on the Russ Joy Show. Bye, everybody.